Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to PhotoBiz Live. This is Joanne from the PhotoBiz team, and today we're joined by Jeff Poole of Indigosilver Studio for a webinar about Lightroom. If you're using Lightroom, but all that jargon baffles you, Jeff is going to make your life easier. He'll discuss keywording, rating, and tagging, and show you how to keep your file structure organized. In addition to getting the opportunity to learn from Jeff in today's webinar, we'll also have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. You can submit your questions using the chat tool and they'll be answered after the presentation. You can also join in the discussion on Twitter by using the hashtag #PhotobizLive. If at any point during today's webinar you have any difficulty hearing the speaker or seeing the slides, please use the comment box and let us know. We'll also be recording this webinar, and it'll be available for replay on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/photobiz. With all that being said, I'll turn things over to Jeff.
Hey guys, can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Joanne?
I can hear you okay.
Okay, I know we had a little bit of trouble with our microphone and everything here, so just want to make sure that everyone can hear me. Well, thank you all for logging in and attending and spending an hour and a half with me today, so I hope that our presentation will be able to find you a little bit of free time so you can actually have some time to spend with your family. Part of our process today that we're going to talk about is streamlining your workflow using Lightroom. And I guess before I get started, I want to thank PhotoBiz for giving me the opportunity to get up here and hopefully not make a fool of myself. So with that being said, it's supposed to be Lori and I both, but she's out of town, so you guys just get me today. So there's a lot of material to cover, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started and just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. This is the pretty little tree that I drew here, so it's going to be kind of fun. But I'll tell you a little bit about Lori and I. You know, we're definitely convention junkies. I'm sure that there hasn't been one that we've missed in the last 5 years. We met at a photography convention. Lori lived in California. I actually convinced her. It was hard, but I convinced her to move over to North Carolina with me in 2010, and we created Indigosilver. We got engaged in January, and we just recently have opened a brand new studio called the Shoot Space. And so there'll be a link with more information about that near the end. But basically, if you're in North Carolina and you ever need studio space, you know, please feel free to check us out. Follow us online at Facebook, Indigosilver. We've got one for our senior brand, which is Indigosilver Seniors, and one for the Shoot Space as well. Here's our Twitter handles and our email. So any questions you have about today, please feel free to contact us. We're like an open book. So let's see what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a complete workflow. You know, a lot of people, you know, think about a complete workflow as, you know, what you're doing to your images, and a workflow with just your images. So there's so much more than a workflow with just your images. We're going to teach you how to network with vendors, keep your portfolio up to date, and pretty much make sure that everything that you do for every session and wedding is consistent throughout your workflow. And, you know, a systematic solution for file organization as well, because if you're like me, I am not an organized person just by nature, so I have to have these systems to help me stay organized. So, you know, we're going to talk about systems today, and if you've ever read the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, it's an amazing book. He's basically talking about a business is only as good as the systems that run it, and that systems, not people, make the life easier, and they create a predictable result every time. And the goal with this is create a system that will run without you being there. Kind of the way we have set up our studio is I want to be able, if we have an intern come in, I want to be able to have her work in Lightroom and help us out, and not really have to babysit her or him the whole time. And so by having these systems in place, it just makes it so much easier to be able to do that. So a little bit about data asset management. I mean, I know a lot of us, you know, struggle with data asset management. I did for the longest time. We're photographers. We're creative people. We're not necessarily organized people. And so we want to help you create a system where you can access any file or set of files anytime with only a few clicks of a mouse. One where every file is structured the same way. This is me. This is the way I was before Lori moved over and snapped me back into place and was like, no, it's not going to happen. You know, I had weddings, and then I had a folder for favorites, and a folder for marketing, and a folder for vendor images, and then, you know, I just had this random folder with whatever felt, you know, like I needed to be in there, and then underneath underneath another wedding, I would have a folder for favorites from that wedding. And, that worked in a sense. But, when I got ready to produce a marketing piece, I didn't really know what size those images were, whether they had been retouched or not, whether they had a logo on them or not. And, the problem with this is, you're creating duplicates of images throughout your file structure. The system that we have now is pretty rock solid. We have subfolders underneath the raw files, and actually now you'll see that we've changed that to proofs, just a terminology difference. But it's so much easier to stay organized, where I know when I can go into any folder, no matter whether it's a wedding, a portrait session, high school senior, it doesn't matter. The file structure will be the same in there. So a lot of what we're going to do is really teach you how to access your files in a meaningful way that actually makes sense. So I know a lot of you guys out there are wedding photographers. We are as well. If a vendor walked into your studio, how long would it take you to be able to say, sure, hi, Joanne, what do you want? You want images just in general from the flowers that we've done with you, or from a specific venue? Within like 30 seconds, I can have a specific venue with a specific vendor, and I can have every image there that I can export out or email to them right there on the spot while they wait. And know oh, sure, yeah, I'll pull through these, and I'll get back to you in a few days, because, vendors, if they're like they are around here in your area, when they want something, they want it now, and they don't want to wait. So we're gonna hopefully show you how to do that pretty quickly as well. So what about an up-to-date portfolio? We all have PhotoBiz sites, and if you don't, you should, because I made the move to them in January of this year, and oh my goodness, it has done wonders for my SEO and for my business, just being able to be creative. But a lot of photographers' websites, we update it, and then 2 years later, we're like, oh, I need to update my website, or, oh, just look at my blog because my website needs updating and I don't have time. So we're going to show you how to maybe keep that task a little easier as well. And I promise this whole thing isn't slides. We're just going to go over some basics with slides right now, and then I'm going to pull up Lightroom, and we're actually going to work in Lightroom in our live catalog. So what we're going to go over today, we're going to talk about file structure. We're going to talk about catalogs, what they are, how they work, why you need them. We're going to go over the import dialogues, the import presets and metadata. We're going to talk about image processing and developing just briefly, because, again, the whole purpose of this webinar isn't teaching you guys how to use Lightroom to make your images pretty. Most people are using some sort of Adobe product now anyway, so the sliders are very similar in all these products, and I could spend an hour showing you the sliders, and you'd probably be bored out of your mind. We're going to keep you show you how to stay up to date on your portfolio, and a big thing is keywording and tagging. There is so much power in Lightroom with just keywording and tagging all your images, and it'll make your life so much easier moving forward. We're going to talk about sales. There are a lot of amazing programs out there, also very expensive programs out there that promise bigger sales, and we've tried most of them, and the thing that we keep coming back to is Lightroom. And I know people say, Lightroom for sales? Yep, sales, because it's pretty impressive what you can do with Lightroom and how it will speed your workflow up within there as well. We're going to talk about efficient export presets, emailing vendors, creating blogs, mobile apps, and then we're going to take some time for some questions. But before we do all that, I want to talk a little bit about the catalogs and really explain to people what they are. So when you're thinking of Lightroom, a lot of people really don't understand the catalogs and why you have to import your images and how all that kind of plays in. And the easiest way that we can explain what a catalog is it's simply a way for Lightroom to reference the files and any information associated with them. The metadata, keywords, edits, anything that makes that file where you can look at that file and make a decision of whether you want to keep it, use it for specific marketing, show it to a client or whatever. It wraps up into a nice little bundle. And the best analogy I can give is we've all gotten that 2-inch thick D&H catalog. We look through that thing and it's amazing. Our mouth is drooling because we want all that equipment and stuff that's in there. But think of that catalog similar to Lightroom. You're looking at that catalog and it's broken down by genre. You've got video, you've got audio, you've got stills, you've got different things different subcategories of products that they offer, but it's all broken down within that one big catalog. The images that you're seeing in that catalog obviously are not, the actual product. The actual product's up at B&H in New York. You're just looking at a thumbnail preview of that product, and think of all the description and the price and the size and the weight and the capabilities of that product as the metadata. Moving a step forward, you're looking at that one big catalog, and now you can make a conscious decision of, oh, I do want that or I don't want that. So, that's kind of the way catalogs are set up. Non-destructive editing, this is a huge plus for Lightroom. Basically what your Lightroom does, it creates that preview for you, and any metadata or any edits that you've done are stored in an XML file as metadata that when you call to action and say, okay, now export this file, it applies all those actions to it. So you're never really working on your original file, which is amazing because those are your negatives, so to speak. So when people talk about catalogs, they really don't understand how to set up catalogs. And so the question is always, should I put all of my files in one big catalog, or should I have a catalog for every client, or should I have a catalog for weddings, a catalog for portraits? What's the best practice? And with this, there really is not a best practice. It's more of a preference. There are some pros and cons to having a large catalog. There's, obviously some cons to having individual catalogs. Once we start talking about keywording and metadata and things like that, you'll really understand why it's good to have at least certain genres. And what we found is best for weddings is in one catalog, portraits is in one catalog, and we've got it broken down to a couple of catalogs. And the reason for that is it still gives us the opportunity to use that deeper keywording possibilities while keeping the file size relatively small of that catalog. And by keeping that file size small, it will allow us to share the catalogs between us. And this is something that I plan to go a lot into, is syncing and sharing and networking catalogs, and we'll talk about it a little bit today. But I think, after Photoshop World and seeing some of the stuff that's coming out with the newer versions of Lightroom, I don't think that's going to be as big an issue moving forward as it has been in the past. If any of you guys are multiple workstation studios like we are, we found it hard that, I could be in our weddings catalog working, but, Lori couldn't. She couldn't access that weddings catalog. And so that's one big reason why we broke it down into different genres. So at least if she's working in the weddings catalog, I can be working in the portraits catalog. And we've adjusted our workflow so that certain days I have the catalog and certain days she has certain catalogs. We can sync them back and forth, and that's something that I'll show you how to do as well, and we'll talk briefly about it, so that it all kind of ties in and becomes one big cohesive unit as far as what you're doing. So networking catalogs, yes, it can be done. A few things to know is that your catalog must reside on a drive attached to your computer. This has been a drawback from Lightroom for a long time, is that you can't put your catalogs on a networked drive and access them from your computer. An easy workaround to that is create for example, we have each of the catalogs on each of our computers, and we use a program called SyncBack. It's like a $49 program. It's from a company called Two Bright Sparks. We're not associated with Two Bright Sparks. We don't get any kickbacks or anything like that. It's just a software that we found. I'm sure there are other sync softwares that will work, but we basically sync the catalogs back and forth between the computers. One thing that we found early on is even though you can sync the catalogs back and forth, and I can have what looks like a fully functional catalog on my computer that I can open and work in while Lori is open and working in hers, doesn't work like that. You can only have that catalog open on one computer at a time. So if she has it open on her computer and I open it on my computer and make changes, yeah, I just wasted my time because those changes aren't there. So you have to sync your catalog back and forth. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute about, not necessarily just syncing it from one computer to the next so you can work, but we actually sync it to our sales stations and our client meeting rooms here in our studio as well. And you'll really see the power of how syncing can come in just a few minutes when we start talking about that. So this whole thing is about developing a system. You guys have to develop a system that works for you Lori and I have spent a lot of time developing a system that works for us. And so, and this includes importing, how you're going to do it, rating, keywording, sales, export. And our system, just a quick look at our system is, when we have import presets. And there are a lot of import presets that you can put, and I'll show you all those in a minute. But the main thing that we use is copyright metadata. With images being stolen left and right these days, having your copyright metadata embedded in your file is important. We cull and process. We rate and keyword all the images at the same time. We use pick flags for a quick cull. Any 4-star image goes on our blog. Any 5-star image goes in our portfolio. Red labels are just ones that are used, like do not use. A lot of times when we photograph boudoir, we will meet with the client and ask them, okay, which ones can we use in our studio, which ones can we use online, and which ones do you not want us to use at all. So the red label is kind of designated for do not use those images. We've designated the green label for orders, the blue label for album selects, and export presets. There's just a lot of them, and that's where we really hope to make your life easier. So enough of the slides and the boring stuff. Let's actually take a look at Lightroom. So as we're in Lightroom, a brief overview of what we're looking at here is you have the windows on the left and the right. You can actually close off each of these windows here. But we're going to go right into the import dialog and start there because that's where everything kind of starts at. So once you're in the import dialog here, there's a couple of things that you're going to need to look at. Selecting your source is going to be where you're pulling your images from, obviously. Most of the time, that's going to be from a compact flash or an SD card. And once you plug that in, it'll automatically pull up your images here. I'm just going to grab, just a file here that just has web share. I'm not even sure what's in it, just so it'll light up some of these other things here. But once you choose your source, you can choose to check them all or check certain ones that you wanted. And then you can copy them as a DNG, which is the digital negative file. You can simply copy them, move them, or add them. Most of the time, you're going to be copying them from a flash drive into Lightroom. That's what we recommend. I know some people actually will copy their files onto a file in their computer and then just simply move them over into Lightroom once they manually copy and paste or drag and drop them from their card. It's a lot easier to do it if you're importing them. You can do it all in one step. It makes your life a little easier. We use a device called a Delphin image router. They don't make them anymore. I know you can find them on eBay from time to time, but we can drop up to 8 compact flash cards in, which is far more than we need for an average wedding. But we can drop 8 compact flash cards in at a time, copy them all in, import them at one time, and it just makes life so much easier. So once you're in here, you choose whether you want to copy, move, or add the photos to your catalog. Once you come in here, your file handling and everything, there's a lot of different presets here, and we're going to choose this copy area because that's what we're normally doing. And from there, you choose your destination of where you want it. There are this render standard previews here. There's the minimal and the standard and the one-to-one. I recommend rendering standard size previews because it's gonna render them quicker. You might want to render one-to-one if you need that speed when you're actually editing your images, so you don't have to wait for the small wheel to actually load the image. But for most of our purposes, standard size previews work well. You can have it choose not to import suspected duplicates. I never really have this checked, just for the fact that I want it to import them all, and if I've got a duplicate, I'd rather have a duplicate than have Lightroom think it's a duplicate and not import something that I need. So we never use this. You can also have it make a second copy. So a lot of people, a lot of photographers early on, when you're downloading and backing up your images, you'll download them and you'll automatically burn them to a disk or copy them to a second location. Lightroom can do that for you by clicking this right here and telling it where you want that secondary backup to be. So that's going to help you out a lot as well. You can rename the files on the way in. This is, again, it's not something that we do just because our workflow, we actually use the raw number on it, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. But you can have it to rename your files on the way in, so if you wanted to do that. You can have it apply a develop import on the way in, and all the import presets that you have within Lightroom are in here. So if you know that you have a tendency to shoot a little underexposed, you can have it to, pump the color just a little bit or the contrast a little bit, and you can have it apply those presets as you're actually importing the images. And then you choose your destination, and you can have it put it into a subfolder if you want. We have gotten to where we mainly just import them right into the master folder, and that way all of our images are there, and then our export presets are designed to actually put subfolders in there. One of the biggest things that that I think people overlook when they're importing these is metadata. You've got to put your metadata into your files. So this area right here is really what you want to be concentrating on. You want to have your copyright status, you want to have your usage terms, all of your creator information, your website. All of this needs to be filled out. Your copyright metadata is embedded in every file that you actually import in. So I highly recommend doing that as well. So this is our metadata here. So you want to have this information filled out right here. And from there, you'll just import your images. You can have, down here, you can have a preset. If you're always importing into the same file every time, and then you move them from in there, you can create import presets. Again, it's not something that we do because we're importing to a different location every time for a wedding or a portrait session or whatnot. But that's the import dialog, and basically what you're doing is at this point you're pulling all the information into Lightroom so that Lightroom can be the little nerdy program to kind of keep up with everything for you. So once you get your images imported, you'll come into your library module here. And the library module is somewhere that this is where all of the quick call and all of your rating, keyword tagging, and things like that come into play at. And so over here, if you can see on this side, we've got all of our weddings here. And as we break it down, we'll have our ceremony, which has all of our files in it. And then we have a proofs folder. Once we cull all of it down and we have our rejects, we move them into a proofs folder. And that is more for a sales process than anything else, and I'll talk about that when we get into sales of why we actually move them into a proofs folder. But one of the things about your library module and calling is you don't want to spend forever in your library module. So we recommend, as you're doing your quick call, work in concepts. Choose images that you want to call and select those and pull them up into your survey mode. And once you get them into this mode, you've got several images here. Instead of going through every image and hitting the reject key, which is X, and going through every image and hitting X hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, we recommend doing what we call a quick call. Open up your images in certain concepts and pick the one that you want. And so if this is the one I want, I'm going to choose P for pick, and it's going to flag that one. All the rest of these will be unflagged, and then I will move to my next concept. It makes life a lot easier when you're going through these. So I'll open these up. I'll choose N to bring it into survey mode. And, these two are very similar, so I'll just pick one, and I'll click the tick flag. And what that does is, as you're going through, you're only picking the ones that you intend to keep. This makes it so much easier when you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images that you're calling, because now at the end you can tell Lightroom, basically down here you have your filter menu, so you can tell it, just show me the pick images. Don't show me anything else. Just show me the ones with pick flags, and it'll show you just the ones with pick flags. Or you can tell it, show me the ones without pick flags. I only want to see the ones without pick flags. And it'll show you just those. We've created custom presets for these, so I can tell it to hide any rejects. I can tell it to show me picks only. I can tell it to show me rejects only. And there are none in here because we're in the proofs folder, and I'll explain that again in just a moment. Or I can tell it to show me unflagged only. So as we're going through and we're calling a session, all I'm doing is opening up Lightroom, pulling in concepts, each concept at a time. So for example, these rings, I would pull these 3 rings in here, and I've got 2 that are very similar. So I would pick the one of these 2 that I wanted to use, and I would click the pick flag on it, and that would add it to my chosen images. From there, you can tell it to show you everything that's not flagged. It's simply select them all and hit reject them all at once, because you know if you don't want them at that point. If you didn't choose them with a pick flag and you know that you don't want them, you can reject them. Now, rejecting an image doesn't necessarily delete it. It doesn't get rid of it from your file. It just basically tells Lightroom is saying, okay, if you don't want to see that anymore, I'll mark it to where you don't have to see it unless you absolutely want to. We reject anything that is not going to show our client. So we'll take a wedding that has 1,500 images and bring it down to 500. At that point, we move it into this proofs folder. The proofs folder is fantastic once you go into a sales process, because if you've ever been in a sales process and you've had people saying, well, let's get rid of that one, you can reject it. But then you know they're always going to say, oh, well, what about that one that I didn't want to see a while ago? That's why we use a proofs folder, because now if you go and show just rejected images and they see the other 400 images that you rejected, at that point they're going to want to know where all those were and why they didn't see them. So moving them into a proofs folder is one reason why we do that. So now that you're in here, you see this file structure. We have proofs. Some of the export presets that we have created actually are broken down into orders, print share, teasers, web share, and we know that every file that we open is going to have a combination of these, and every file is going to be exactly the same. And that's once you get down to your working proof set. So let's say we've gotten down to our working proof set, and now we want to go into the develop module and actually work on these images. And let me find one here that I just want to retouch real quick and just show you this, because this is about the only thing that we'll do in the develop module. So this image here, let's say this is an image that we actually want to retouch. We, at this point, once we go through and have actually gotten down to our proof set, we always want to retouch a couple of them. We don't retouch images generally until they are actually ordered. So we round trip images into Photoshop and back into Lightroom. And if you hit Control-E on Lightroom, it will actually open it up into Photoshop. And I will pull this window over here in just a moment and show you how we actually do this. So I've got this image that I've now pulled into Photoshop. And let's say we're going to retouch this image. And I'm not going to do a lot to it, just for the fact that everybody knows Photoshop. I just want you to see that when you bring it back into Lightroom, that it's going to stack it. And that's the main thing that I want to show. So basically on this one, I'm just going to do a dark and light and center on it, like a little vignette on the outside, just so you can see a difference when you bring it back in, that something has been done to it. All right, and you'll see that pop into there. All right, so nothing major, no crazy changes. I'm just going to hit save within Lightroom, within Photoshop, and that's going to pull it back in, and now you'll see that there are two here. This is a huge part of our workflow, is actually editing, especially our favorites or our portfolio images from within Lightroom. Because now, this 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, I can right-click on here and ask it to stack those images, and it'll collapse the stacks. And now I have my edited image on top. This is huge for your portfolio, because now every image that you want, that you edit within Lightroom, we can say, okay, now this is a 5-star image. This will go into our portfolio. So once you're in your portfolio, once you have it rated 5 stars, now it's going to be in our portfolio when we sync our software over. So again, if you remember earlier, I was telling you we use the pick flags, we use a 4- and 5-star system, and we use a color rating system. So now that we're back into, and the develop module again, it's very simple. The sliders, once you get in here, are just about like anything that you've ever worked with an Adobe product. I'll go over the outline of this just a little bit. But over here you've got your presets. So once you get into your user presets, you create your user presets simply by making a mix of images over here, and then to simply save that, you're gonna add the preset here. And one thing that I used to do is I didn't realize when I did a lot of things here, I would just hit check all because I didn't understand. And now when I saved that preset, it would save everything that has been done to this image rather than just one thing. So if I wanted to do a vibrance adjustment, then I would click just the vibrance adjustment. Or if I wanted split toning, I would pick just the split toning. And this way you can actually stack your presets. Once you create the presets, they're there for you to use. But again, the develop module is not really why we're here. The reason why we're here is to go through the library module. Another thing that we do while we're inside the library module is if you look over here, this is our keyword list. This is where Lightroom really saves you a lot of time. The keyword list is something that we use all the time for vendors. This wedding, for example, we know that we work this wedding with lily bells here. So I can choose any image in here that I wanted for lily bells. As I go through, I simply control-click the images that I want to give to her. And once I have all the images for her clicked, then I will come over here and click this little button right here next to it. And that will add those images to her keyword set. Now, at any point, I could actually click the side arrow here and see just the ones that are actually keyworded for her. So if she were to come in, I could quickly go over and see just the images that are assigned to her if she needed those images. Once we get to export presets, I'll show you how we actually email these out, and we'll go through vendor kind of networking and everything with that as well, because it'll make your life so much easier. But Lori, I mean, she spent hours and hours going through and adding every vendor that we possibly work with into this keyword list, and it has done wonders for our business, because now when we work with a florist, it is so easy for us to just go and tag this florist and say, okay, here are the images that we have worked with Fiore, for example. And now, anytime that I need to give images to Fiore, it's as simple as going in here, selecting the images, and giving them to her. So let's say that Fiore, Jean with Fiore walked into our studio now and asked, okay, I want images that we shot together at a certain venue. How would you do that? Because now, when you click here, you're seeing them broken down from every venue that we've ever worked with this florist. We use smart collections to do that. So if you're over in this left-hand pane and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you see these smart collections. So you want to click a smart collection and hit create new smart collection. And you can tell it, keyword contains Fiore. Keyword contains, and you can simply add another one. I can remove that one. So I can say, show me any images with the keywords that contain Fiore. And also show me any keywords that, any images that have the keyword that says 128 South. And I hit create. And this creates a smart collection of images that I've worked with this particular florist at this one particular event. If she says she wants to add another one on or change it, then at that point it's pretty simple. We double-click on it, and we tell it, okay, Wilmington Convention Center. And now it changes to Wilmington Convention Center with this florist. So being able to network with your vendors and using keywords like this is such a huge part of our business. And I definitely recommend spending the time to create keywords. And it's not necessarily just for working with vendors. If you're a portrait photographer and you do location, you can create keywords for railroad tracks, or trains, or the beach, or a garden, anything that you can think of as a location. And so when a client comes in to meet with you, it's very simple to show them exactly what they're wanting. If a senior comes in to meet with me and they go, oh, I love downtown images, with just a few clicks, you can create a subset of your images within here that will show them exactly what they want to see without doing anything else. And so these smart collections, we've got them for military. We photograph a lot of military weddings, so we just inherently created a smart collection that's always there for military. So as we're meeting with the client, we can simply just click on military, and it will show them all of this. Now, I know you're wondering, do we meet with a client in front of our computer? No, we don't necessarily meet with clients in front of our computer. However, we do have our computers here in our studio network, so that anytime that we photograph a wedding or a portrait, as soon as we go into that wedding or portrait and we choose whether it's a 5-star image or not, it is automatically going to go into a weddings subfolder or smart collection, because our main folder tree up here, if you look, it's labeled weddings. And so we built that smart collection so that it says 5-star all weddings. And so we told it, all anything that's greater than or equal to 5-star, show it here. So you can tell it bridal as well. So this one will have, 2 different subsets. It'll have a rating greater than or equal to 5, and in a folder that contains bridal. So you can break this down any way that you can think about to create these smart collections. And so once we photograph a wedding and we come in and we do our 5-star ratings, it automatically will go here, and we have sync back set to automatically sync our catalog to our sales and consultation room at midnight every night. So we can photograph a wedding on Saturday, come in on Sunday, download all the images, pick our 5-star images, because anytime you photograph a session or a wedding, we know as soon as that button clicks and we look at the back of the camera, oh, that's one of my favorites. So it doesn't take long once you get your images downloaded to go pull a few of your favorites, mark them 5-star, round trip them into Photoshop, back into Lightroom, and now you have a retouched version of this file that's 5-star rated that will sync over into your sales room if you have one, or even just in a way that if you ever want to see all of your 5-star rated images, that you can export out for updating your website. We use this right here as well. We'll say, when we're getting ready to update our website, we'll say, show me everything. We'll click this 5-star all wedding related over here, and it'll show me anything that's been rated 5 stars from weddings. And so now when we get ready to update our website, these are the ones that we know we want on the website. They're already retouched, so all we have to do is export them out and upload them to the website. There is no more, oh, well, I need to go through and retouch all my favorites before I can upload them, because we all know that that is just a huge task that never gets done. Pick your 5 or 10 favorites from every session or every wedding, 5-star them, or whatever system works for you, whether you use a color label or a star, edit them in Photoshop or retouch them in Photoshop, leave them in Lightroom fully edited, and it's going to make your life so much easier when it comes down to updating your portfolio or working with vendors, sending vendors images, between having all these keywords and star rating systems. So again, just to kind of recap all of that before we move forward, is the way we do a quick call is we work in concepts, and you'll hear me talk about working in concepts again in just a moment. And so again, if we're working in concepts, we'll choose, these images here. We'll pick our favorite one. We'll choose the pick flag from it. We'll show the inverse of that and show everything that doesn't have a flag, and we'll reject those altogether. Once we get them all pick flagged, we'll go through and we'll choose our favorites for 5-star images. We'll retouch those in Photoshop, so when they come back into Lightroom, they're already retouched. And that way, anytime that we need to show or use our favorite images from this session, they're automatically in our portfolio and retouched. So yeah, I hope that wasn't too confusing, but it's definitely something that you can work with. So let's say that this session here is now completely, we've already rated it, we've already color coded it, or actually this one is a previous session, so the green are actually ordered images. But let's say we're at the point now where we have them rated, we have them keyworded, we have them edited, we have them ready to show our client. For us, we sync the catalog over into our sales room, and we start with a slideshow of the images. So we pull in to the slideshow module. And this is starting our sales process, is we start with the slideshow module. We pick one of our favorites, and as the client walks in, this image is up on the screen when they walk in. One thing that you can do is, if you're not familiar with Lightroom, the L key on your keyboard is what's called lights out. So if you click the L key once, it'll dim your entire display. If you click it twice, it goes completely dark. Now on this one, we're not officially clicked the slideshow, so you see all of the lines for the actual window itself and the constraints of where the image is going to fit. But once you go into the sales process in just a minute, I'll show you how that really works a lot. So with the slideshow module, there are a lot of different options that you can choose over here. We simply choose a simple white stroke. We don't want to cast a shadow. I think it's just defaultly checked, but we use a black background, so it doesn't matter. But you could choose a white background, and you could have it to drop a drop shadow on here to give it a nice effect. This is the show guides. We usually turn that off. You can actually put your logo on there and have it show in the top left of the screen. We choose not to do that. We just want the image to speak for itself. You can also choose a watermark and have it display your watermark on there as well if you would like. And we'll talk about how to create watermarks in just a few minutes. But we choose not to have that as well. You can show any ratings on the slideshow. But the main thing with the slideshow is we actually want to be able to show our clients images in a slideshow so that they get a sense of what they're looking at before they buy. So once you get everything set over here the way you want it, we have an ending screen that just has our logo on it. You can create a template. And by creating a template, once you get everything on this right-hand pane set, you simply create a template, name it, and save it, and it's there to use later. And so now our user templates actually are not synced in here for some reason. But once you hit play, as soon as you hit play, it's going to render your slideshows and hit pause. Hit the space bar, and it will pause that slideshow. That way, when your client walks in, you've got that one screen, that one image on your screen, and you can chat with them for a few minutes. And then you hit the slideshow button again, the space bar button again, and it plays their slideshow. From there is when Lori really kind of does her magic and gets in there and sells. And the way that we use Lightroom for sales is very similar to the way that we use it for editing. She works in the library mode. She hides all the panels on the sides because our clients don't really need to see that. And she works in this mode. She works in concepts. So as she starts, she'll be speaking with the client about these 3 images, for example. She'll pull them up like this, and she'll hit the L key so that it takes it away. And she asks the client, these are all 3 very similar images. Which is your favorite? And the clients will say, oh, well, I like, the one in the middle. Our expressions are so great on it. And so at that point, Lori will add a pick flag to it. And if you have more images than this, you can close these out, and your images will get bigger as you go, so you can see that movement there. Hit L again, and it brings it back. And then you can hit the N key again, and it takes it, or actually hit the grid mode, and it takes you back. So this works really well when you have a lot of images that you want to narrow down. You pull these up and then take it here. And now as you're reducing these images and marking them picks or not picks, the ones that they're actually narrowing it down to is going to get larger and larger until you have the one that they actually want to buy right on the screen. Another awesome part about this is once if you're working with a client and they say they like this image here, you can go ahead and choose this one to be a pick flag. And you can also, if they say, well, I want to see it in black and white, or I want to see it, can you crop in a little bit? This is another really good area where Lightroom shines the way we sync it back and forth, because now when Lori is in the sales room and she needs to go into this image here, and the client wants to see it black and white, for example, and they want it cropped in just a little bit. Now when Lori comes in here to do this, and she saves this for the client, when this catalog syncs back over to me, I don't need to do anything else to it, because I know, other than retouch it, because I know that she's cropped it the way the client wants it, and I know that she's gotten the black and white the way the client wants it. So when it comes back into me as an order, I simply, and generally Lori will flag it green in the sales room as well. So now when I'm coming back into the catalog to place the order, not only do I have the order form, but I also have the Lightroom catalog with all the orders already selected, with the crops already applied, with any special treatments, vintage, vignettes, cropping, anything like that is already applied in there. So it just makes life a little bit easier when you're in that sales process. Another thing that she does that's pretty ingenious is, if I can get this to open up at the bottom, my Lightroom is really dragging right now, and I'm sorry. I'm just going to reopen. I'm going to shut it down and reopen it. But while I'm doing this, another thing that she does is once she has all the pick flags and she has all the crops and edits in, because she has those pick flags, now you can tell Lightroom to show me anything that doesn't have a pick flag. And so right at the end of the sale, she'll be able to pull up the ones that they had initially chose as favorites, but they chose not to order. And she'll show them those images and say, here are the ones that you had initially told me that you liked, but you don't have in any product. And it really, kind of drives home the fact of, oh, okay, well, let me get an 8x10 of this one, or 5x7 of that one, and it just gets you those little extra couple of print sales. And guys, I'm sorry, I don't know what is going on with my my computer here. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me okay, Joanne?
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, I can still hear you just fine. It looks like your computer's being really slow, but we can hear you okay.
Okay. Then I'm just going to go back and just go off my notes here. And guys, I apologize. And maybe in a minute it'll catch up or whatever. But so moving into the sale, away from the sales process, once you're working in Lightroom and you create your sales process and you rate and tag all the client choices for their order, and it syncs back over to me, I know exactly what I need to be ordering, and from there I just simply have to retouch them. I really wish this thing would start working, because the export presets are some of the things that really make your life easier when you're exporting out, whether it's a vendor image or whether it's a client order image, or if you want to make a blog post or create a mobile app. And that's where we normally go after the sales process, because that's what you're doing. But Joanne, do you think it would be too much trouble for me to just shut this down and restart and log back in?
Sure, because you can, I believe, if you're in on the telephone, aren't you? You can still talk to us while you're doing that. So.
Oh, great. Okay, well, let me do that. Then I'll just fry this computer really quick and see if I can just close it out altogether, since I'm still on the phone. So while I'm doing this, does anyone have any questions?
We do have a couple of questions, and some of them it sounds like would be pretty easy for you to answer. So I'll go. Okay. Stormy says, oh, and she also said outstanding workshop. She had to leave a little early, but she's got some questions because she'll listen to the recording. Stormy says, at what point do you create a new catalog? Is size ever a concern?
Anytime you want to, you can create, and size isn't really a concern. I've got probably, in our weddings catalog, we've got maybe 6 years worth of weddings in there, hundreds of thousands of images in our weddings catalog. So I would never create a new catalog just because you're worried about the size of the catalog, because the way Lightroom works is it creates previews for your images. So the images themselves aren't necessarily inside of Lightroom. So the size of the images and the size of the catalog doesn't really correlate. They're not the same. Again, we've got hundreds of thousands of images within Lightroom, and when you're setting up Lightroom, you can tell it to keep your standard size previews for so long, and then it will pull them down to a minimal preview, just something that you can see on there. So older weddings that we go back to, like if I go to a wedding I shot in March, those previews will still be there. But if I want to do any work in there, then I'm going to need to tell it to go back and rebuild those standard size previews, because it will dump those larger previews that it keeps and just go down to a file saving, mode. So yeah, I wouldn't create a new catalog just out of the fact of, oh, I've got a lot of weddings in here, it's getting too big. The main thing you want to create new catalogs for is if you want different genres in there, and you need to be able to access, like in our situation, we have 3 workstations. I want to be able for me to be working on portraits, Lori to be working on weddings, and someone else to be working on events all at the same time. If everything were in one big catalog, we wouldn't be able to do that. So that's why we did it the way we did. I hope that answered her question.
Great. Thank you for that. Also, Kim asked me to pass along to you that Lori, her mom, and the office are watching from California.
Great. Tell her she's not seeing me sweating over here.
Okay, let's see. I have a question from, I believe it's Gwilyn, and she asks, do you have any favorite blogs or resources for Lightroom tips or presets? Do you purchase presets or just create your own?
We actually create our own. When I was first starting out, I would buy presets and actions and anything that I could get my hand on that I think would make my images look good. And I quickly found out that a lot of people, photographers create presets for the way that they shoot. And so a preset that I create for the way I shoot may not look good on your images the way you shoot. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I have a tendency of slightly overexposing my images 9 times out of 10. So I know that when I build my presets, they're going to come across and be a little bit, they're not going to look right on someone that just nails their exposure perfect every time. So as far as, places to go, one thing that we'll talk about when we get into the export presets is there's a website called photographers-toolbox.com, and they've got some really cool plugins for Lightroom, and that's something that we'll talk about in a minute. Again, those they really save you a lot of time. But as far as presets, we just make our own.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Paulina says, this is an awesome webinar, even with a crashed computer. And this may be something you'll need when you get the computer back up, but she says, can you explain again how to color code flagged images?
Yes. So down at the bottom, and I'll show you once I get it back going here, I just need to get the link. So once you get ready and you flag your picked images, and you want to color code those images, there is the little spray paint can down at the bottom, and you can actually use the spray paint can to spray on different settings. You can spray on metadata, you can spray on develop presets, you can spray on labels, flags, stars, pretty much anything that you need to spray on, you can do that. And that's what we use when we color code those. Well, my computer is back up and running, so hopefully, all right, looks like we might be back in business, maybe. Everybody cross your fingers.
And Bala said, once you go Mac, you'll never go back. So.
I know, right? I would love to, but man, I tell you, we've got so many computers here in our studio that it's not feasible to do that. Okay, so Paulina's question was, how do you color code stars, flagged images? So let's say this is a flagged image. We want to be able to apply a color code to it. Down here at the bottom, you see the spray paint can. Click that, and then you can click over to your rating, and you can add stars, or you click over to label, and you can add colors. So from there, green, and you see your spray paint can turns green, and now you just paint that image green. You can just go through and paint images green. And you can paint them any color you want to. If you unclick green, your spray paint can turns gray, and then you unpaint them. That's the way we do it. It's just easier for me to use that spray paint can because when I'm scrolling through and I know I've got a list, if let's say an order comes on online instead of in studio and they're not color-coded already, as I'm scrolling through here with the spray paint can, I'm just looking at these numbers. This is another thing inside of your preferences of Lightroom, and I know I'm jumping all over the place, but if you know me, then that's just me. Once you go into preferences, in here, and this will save you a lot of time as well, I think it may be under view options. Okay, this expanded cells right here under view options, you can have it to show things like the index number, the copy name, file extensions. You can have it to show a lot of stuff here. We always want it showing that native number right there, and an index. This is your index number 31 right here, for example. So when I'm talking about my export presets in a minute, you will see where this comes into play because we reference all of our files as, the couple's names like Lamb Connor _31_5079. So that way, there's no more file naming errors when we get a file back from a client because it's got the index number. This is number 31 in their proof set, but it's also underscore the last 4 digits of the original file name. And I'll show you how to set that up in a minute. But as I'm going through back to the spray paint can again, I've got it selected to green. I'm scrolling through going, okay, they want this one as an order. They want this one as an order, this one as an order. And then when I get ready to see what my orders are, I simply come down here and tell it, show me everything that's green. And now it'll show me just the ones that are green. Those are ones that I'll retouch and export out as orders. So I hope that answered her question. So give me just a second to find out where I was before my computer crashed and everything. So I was just finishing up, I think, the sales portion of it. Did anyone have a question about anything moving before I move into export? Because I know we've been kind of disheveled here.
I do have a question from Stormy who asks if there's a way to create a frame in Lightroom and apply it using a batching method.
To apply a frame, like a border?
I believe so. She was the one that had to leave, and she was leaving her questions so that you could listen to the recording later. So
I think that there are borders within Lightroom as well in the print module. It's not something that I've ever gotten into, but I would guess that it would work similar to the way we put a logo on, that you just apply it when you export it out. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so I'm just going to say sorry, I can't answer that. I will look into it though, and if you're the Stormy that I know from Jacksonville, you can call me and I'll see if I can kind of answer for you. If not, you can call me anyway. I'll find out. So so now that you've got all your images keyworded, they're all tagged, color-coded, and everything, your export dialog, I'm going to go over the export dialog with you really quick. And here's where this has really made my life super easy. All of these presets in here are ones that we actually use for a purpose. So the album selects, I'm going to walk through this export dialog for you really quick before we get started on that. Back to exporting images. Once you export an image, it basically is going to take that set of instructions that you had given Lightroom, and it's going to apply it to the image and then export it to a secondary folder somewhere else on your computer. So that way your original image is never really harmed in any way. So you always choose an export location. For the longest time, I was choosing where I want to export it, every time. I would go in and I would create a folder manually, and I would come in here and export to that folder. And then one day it just kind of dawned on me, do everything as a same folder as the original, so it creates a subfolder. So for my album selects, it will create a subfolder called album selects OK to delete. That means for my purposes, it's okay to delete this file after the album is done. File renaming, I left this one blank because depending on the client, it might be, Lamb Connor, it might be, Smith Wedding, whatever you want to name your file is going to be different each time that you rename it. And that's why we always rename on export instead of import, because we want it to be, we don't want to rename them on import and have a sequence of 1 through 1,000 images, but then you go through and you reject 400 of those, and now you've got a sequence of 1 through 1,000 on the number, but there's ones missing, and then clients are going to call and be like, well, wait, my images go from Lamb Connor 4 to Lamb Connor 8. Am I missing photos? So this is why we always export on rename on export. And we have a custom setting, so if you see it here, it says untitled 001_0083. So if you look at this file here, it is sequence number 1, image number 0083. So when I name this file Lamb_Connor _, this is named Lamb_001_0083. It's both the sequence number and the file number. And the way you do that is you come to custom settings. This is your custom settings editor, and you tell it that you want the custom sequence, the custom text, which you're going to type in. You want a sequence number, and you can tell it, how many you want, like a 3-digit or a 4-digit number, and you tell it you want an original number suffix. And these are all right down here. And so you can see in here that I've got, exactly that in there. And so you can choose this, with or without, but you just choose it in here, and it creates this custom sequence for you. That's made our life a lot easier, because prior to Lori, I was always having file number mismatches because I would try to rename them on import or just do a batch rename in a third-party browser, and there was no real way to keep that original file name in there to be able to go back and reference to. And so I don't think we've had a single file naming issue since we went to this right here as well. So, so I definitely recommend creating a custom preset where you actually keep your sequence number and keep your original file name there. As far as the file renaming, again, that's it. File settings, we always want to export ours JPEG. We use our sRGB, quality 100. We don't change those because this is setting for a high-res file. Since it's a high-res file, we don't want it to resize any of these. We want it to be resolution 300. And I'll show you in a minute how this dialog changes when you go to a different preset. We We don't apply any output sharpening. That's just a preference. You can, and you can tell it how much. But we just do all our sharpening, as we're editing the images and get them the way we want them. But you can have it sharpened for different types of paper, screen, things like that if you want. We have it to include all of our metadata. We have it include any keywords, pretty much anything that we have in the metadata, we want it to include on export. And then watermarking. And this is another thing that a lot of people really get lost about with Lightroom is, or any program, because I see people all the time wanting to know how to make an action in Photoshop to put their logo on their images or how to do it in Lightroom. And this is where you do it right here. So you'll check this watermark here, and we have a couple. We have our studio logo at 800 pixels, which is for a blog or anything that we consider a web share. Anything that you're going to share on the web or digital device, we call it web share. And that's why over on this panel here, you'll see web share and print share. So it's just our studio's way of knowing, are you going to share it on the web or are you going to share it in print? And that also kind of keys our clients in to saying, okay, well, I'm not going to print something that says web share because it won't look right. Or, I don't want to put something online that is print share because the file's going to be too big. So, and I'll go over a few other of these presets in a minute. So we have our Studio 800 pixel watermark for that, and we also have one that's for a senior. We did create one that's a 3,000 pixel image with a watermark on it in case we give them to vendors and they want to print it, put it in their office or something like that. We still want that logo on there, but it's a print resolution file if they want to use it for an ad or anything. And the way you do this is you just click Edit Watermarks here. And now what you'll need to do beforehand is determine what size you want your images to be. For us, our blog is 800 pixels. It's set to 800 pixels wide. Facebook displays images nicely between 800 and 900 pixels. It doesn't butcher them too bad. So we set ours to 800 pixels. You might choose to do 900, 700, or 1,000. But whatever size you actually set, and this is pretty important, you'll want to make sure that the size that you're exporting, like 800 pixels, you would not want to export it. If I clicked, let me close out of here, if I clicked resize this image to 1,000 pixels on export, and I told it to put a Studio 800 pixel logo on it, it's not going to look right. The logo will be really small on there. So whatever you create your watermark for needs to be what you set right here as a resize to. So in doing that, you want to go into Photoshop, create a square PNG file, and create your logo with it. For us, we prefer our logo down in this bottom right-hand corner. So if I'm hovering on this, you see that it's square. It doesn't really fill up this image. The reason we did it as square is because whether that image is horizontal or vertical, it's going to be 800 pixels on that long side. So we want our logo to be the same size on either a horizontal or a vertical image. And that's pretty important because you don't want to have a horizontal image with a huge logo on it, and then when you export it out vertical, now your logo is really tiny because it's measuring the wrong size of the box, so to speak. So if you create in Photoshop a new document, put your logo on there, and you want to create this as square, create your document to 800 by 800 or 900 by 900. Put your logo in there, and now when you import this in here, you click graphic, it's going to ask you to choose your graphic over here, and now it will actually apply your graphic in here. And as you scroll down here, you can see that it asks you where do you want it. Do you want it on this side? Do you want it at the top? Where do you want your graphic to be at? And we just choose this bottom corner here. You can also tell it, I want it larger or smaller. We just tell it, 100% because I designed it exactly what I want it to be. If you want to be able to just design one and adjust it in here, you can. We just knew that where we designed it to be exactly what we want, so we just tell it to put it at 100%, put it down in the bottom right-hand corner. For our seniors logo, very similar. It's just a round circle that has our logo on it. It's a little grungy. And again, we did the same thing. It's an 800 by 800 pixel image created in Photoshop. We saved it as a PNG file, so it has a transparent background. So now that when you come in here and create these presets, it'll actually work in here and just drop it down in that bottom corner for you every time, or top corner, or wherever you want it. If you design this square and you design your logo centered in here, then you could tell it, well, center this box, and now your logo is centered in the bottom. So you just choose, how you want it to fit in there. And once you save it, that's your watermark. And then when you're exporting your images, you just tell it which one you want. And so let's take a look at one of our web share. This is our web share for Studio. And so again, this up here at the top is the same. We put it in a subfolder as web share. So as you look over here, I'm going to close out this dialog for a minute, but as you look over here under this, you see we have a web share folder. And you see all these images are web share underneath the proofs folder. We have a teasers. This is the images that we ran as teasers. We have the print share. We have an orders folder. So all of these folders now, because in the export dialog, I tell it to put it in the same folder as the original photo, it just makes your organization so much easier, because now I'll have one for album selects, and that file will be in a folder, album selects, okay to delete. It'll be under, gift file with wall portrait. It'll be under print share. It'll be under tablet if I want to export it out to a size that fits well on my tablet. So each one of these is designed to drop down into that subfolder. And again, if you look here, this one is a teaser for our Studio. So it has it to resize it at 800 pixels, 72 dpi, so it's a small file size. We did have this one because we knew it's going on screen. We did have it sharpened for screen, and we have it to our watermark for our Studio. So that's pretty cool to be able to just export those out and do that every time and be able to see those folders drop in underneath each one, and it just keeps your file structure really, really organized. Does anybody have any questions about the export dialog of how to set it up before I move on to some plugins?
I'm not seeing any so far about the export dialog, but we can come back to them if we get any.
Okay, great. So export dialogs aside, one thing that has really, really saved us a ton of time is I hate blogging. I absolutely hate blogging, but it's something that we need to do. For me, I didn't like having to go into Lightroom, select out my favorites, export them into a folder, go into Blogger, open up Blogger, type in whatever I needed to type in, import the images in, make sure they're centered. It's a process, and for me, time is everything. So there is, in your plugins manager here, if you go to photographers-toolbox.com, they have a couple of different plugins, and one's called Lightroom Blog, one's called Lightroom Gmail. They are pretty amazing plugins, and I'll talk about both of those. But we use Lightroom Blog, and now when I want to do a blog post, let me get to some images that I actually want to blog. So let's say I want to blog these 3 images. I'm going to select those, and I'm going to click Export, and now as easy as it is to blog, I'm going to do a blog post for portrait, and it's going to open up this. If you see Export to LR Blog up here, it opens it up there, and now it automatically will log me into Blogger, and it will ask me here, to create a new post. So I want it to create a new post, and I'm going to name this one PhotoBiz Test. I can type in my content here, blah, blah, blah. And then down, as you go down, it asks you an export location. I just tell it I want a temporary folder because I don't want to keep copies of images on my computer that are just ones that I put on the blog. We rename it to something that is SEO friendly, Wedding Photography by Indigosilver. It has it automatically resized into 800 pixels, and it has our Studio watermark on it. And this is pretty awesome. I click Export, and watch what happens. You see it's exporting these photos up here. The next thing that's going to happen is it's automatically sending them to Blogger, and it's going to open my Blogger window. And at this point, all I have to do is preview it, make sure all my text up here is right, make sure my images are centered the way I want them, and click Publish, and I have blogged. That saves me so much time. I can't even begin to tell you how much time that saves me to be able to blog from Lightroom. Now, obviously, I would normally, when I'm in that export dialog, I would type in more than just blah, blah right here. You would type in, this was a beautiful wedding of Brooke and Jesse, and it was held here. But to be able to blog that quickly is something that I've never really even found any program to make me be able to blog that quickly. And now I actually do all the blogging. So it's kind of crazy. I used to hate it. Now I do all the blogging. So with this software, we've also, with that plugin, we've also created a, so that one was a blog for a portrait session. But we also have a blog for seniors, so it automatically applies their logo to the bottom of that because we have a different logo for our seniors. And we have one for wedding. And the dialogue is set up pretty much the same with the exception of in here at the bottom of our wedding blog post. A while ago, when I was exporting, I had the text go before the photos. Now I'm going to have it to put them after the photos, and it's going to say the wedding of, and I have to go in here and just type Brooke and Jesse, bride Brooke, groom Jesse. And so I go ahead and type in all that information right here so that when I hit export, it blogs it out, and down at the bottom it has all of this information already at the bottom of the blog post. And so again, this little script right here that my friend Lou wrote for me. Thanks, Lou. I think you're watching. So I call it Lou's Magic Center because I don't speak this language. I couldn't get it to center them. So he wrote me this little script to go in here to actually center it. And I call it magic because I messed around with it for days and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And he did it in 2 seconds and messaged it to me on Facebook, and it works. So it's like magic. But again, just rename it to whatever you want. If it's a senior portrait session, Amazing Senior Portraits Wilmington, and that's going to be the file name. So for SEO, it's going to help you. So those really help us out a lot, those blog post exports. Another thing that really saves us a lot of time is email. When we're dealing with vendors, if you're a wedding photographer or you're a children's photographer and you work with a boutique a lot, you want to be able to give that boutique or those certain vendors images from that wedding or portrait shoot. Traditionally we would Dropbox them. That's one way of doing it, but then you don't know if they're ever going to go and download them. We could spend the time to burn disk and do all of that, but that doesn't really, it's not time. It's very time consuming. So again, photographers-toolbox.com, they have email. They have a Lightroom Gmail plug-in. So if you have a Gmail account, you can actually have it set up to email right from Lightroom. And so this one is set up to email high-res photos. This one's set up to email low-res photos. And I already have a template letter in here that just basically says, hello, it was great working with you at, Brooke and Jesse's wedding. This is already pre-typed. It says, great working with you. Here are images. Please be sure to do, to give us logo credit or print credit and everything. And so now when I want to export out these 3 files, and if I want to send them to someone, I simply just type in, an email address. Everything else is already done. I can rename it Indigosilver Wedding Photography because that's what I want it to be renamed to. I don't keep them. Again, export. You can have it to keep those into a different folder if you want, but I just choose not to. Again, it's resized to 800 pixels, and my Studio 800 pixel logo is on there. And now when I hit export, it's going to export those out, and in just a moment you'll see a little window pop up that says email has been sent. And that email, it's just that quick to send images to a vendor. I love those presets, and again, those guys at Photographer's Toolbox, I don't know them. I don't get anything from giving a shout out to them. It's just I found that plug-in, and it works amazingly for us. So just that quick, that email of those images were sent. I sent them to me, but they were sent. And it just as easily could have been 40 images going to a florist. And we do that like within a couple of days after the wedding. We want to make sure that we keyword and go ahead and send out those vendors' images. Because if you're back over here, and the way it's easy is once you keyword it, and I want to send out something to this salon, I click over here. Here are the images for this salon. So now I can just simply say, okay, this salon here, I'm going to control-click all these. I'm going to export them. I'm going to email them low-res. I enter in their email address there. Boom, it's done. I've emailed out images to this salon. Just that quick, and now they have these images with the logo on it, with the letter asking for the print credit for it. And again, those export presets are pretty awesome. And I know that this webinar has been kind of crazy with the computer crash, so I hope that you guys give me a good review. But in a few minutes, I'm going to show you guys a link. I'm going to give you all of these presets for free, and you just have to the only thing you have to do is go give me a review. Tell me how bad I sucked, and I need to go Mac or something. But be gentle, and you'll get all these export presets for free. And again, you will have to use the Lightroom Gmail plugin and the Lightroom blog plugin. Those are ones that you'll need to get through photographers-toolbox.com, but they're donationware, so they're like $10. They're not that expensive for the time that they'll save you. The last thing that I'm going to show you guys is we've all heard of these web apps that will create these mobile apps for your clients. And the ones that, the really popular ones are very expensive. They're something like $280 a year to be able to create these mobile apps, and it's another software that you have to learn how to use, and you have to export your images from Lightroom and upload your images, to this extra software. There is a company called Pro Image Share, and I think it's just proimageshare.com. And again, I don't get anything for shouting these guys out. It's just something that I like, that I love. But it's another plugin that you use within Lightroom, and you can create, I think the program's like $49 or $69, but you can create unlimited web apps from Lightroom, and it's as easy as this right here. I'm going to just select 3 images. I'm going to go over to my web module, and it's going to pull these 3 images into what is my app right here. This is the app pane on the right-hand side. So you see I've gotten Pro Image Share chosen here, and down the right side of it is all the stuff that you'll need to set up for the first time. All your text, your colors, your Facebook, Twitter, email links, Pinterest. If you can even embed a YouTube video in here, your identity plate at the top of it. It's not hard to set up. It took me about 2 hours to set it up for the first time, but now I never have to do it again. And I actually have different ones. So I have ones for my senior models. So this more follows my senior model brand. I have one for just regular seniors. That still follows my senior brand. It just doesn't say senior models. And I have one that is for our studio as well. Once you get this set up, creating mobile apps is easy. I've created on my website or on my hosting account a subdomain that's mobile.indigosilverstudio.com, and that is where I use Lightroom's built-in FTP services to publish these images to that folder. And so what I do now, all I have to do every time I create a web app is go in and just tell it where I want it to go to in here, what new folder I want it to create. So I want it to create one that says PhotoBiz. So down here, I'm just going to put subfolder PhotoBiz. And now, if you go, I hit upload. It's going to ask me for my password. And now I hit upload. And this is building that web app. And you guys will be able to go to it in just a moment. If you go to mobile.indigosilverstudio.com/PhotoBiz, you'll actually be able to see what this looks like. It looks just like an app. Now, for iPhone users, it automatically will ask you to save it to your home screen as an app badge. But for Android users, you do have to just manually say, add to my home screen. But other than that, this is a pretty awesome thing, because now we give all of our clients mobile apps that they can then share with their friends and family. Another thing that we're going to start doing is with high school seniors and weddings that we can do it as well, is when we post those 20 or 25 favorite images, and generally they're the same ones that are going to go on the blog. We're just going to give it to them in a mobile app, because at that point they're already retouched, they're already our favorites. So as we're going through and rejecting files from the library module, one that we're normally going to reject, go ahead and open it in Lightroom, from Lightroom into Photoshop, and we have an ad that we just drop in as a layer on top of there. And now when we bring it back into Lightroom, it's actually an ad that says, mention this app or show this app and receive 16 free wallets with your portrait session for seniors. Or, getting married, book your wedding with Indigosilver and receive a complimentary engagement session. So now when our seniors and brides are showing their apps to everyone, those ads are already in there. And so all they have to do, it's like subliminal, that as they're swiping through these images, then you'll be able to see that ad in there. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that. I'm not sure why it's not uploading. It's just par for the course for today. But if you want to see what one looks like, go to mobile.indigosilverstudio.com/Bonnie, B-O-N-N-I-E. That's one I did yesterday and for a client, and it's just a few images, and you'll actually see what one of these apps looks like. It's pretty cool. It looks just like the apps that all the big companies are selling. So with that, it is 3:30. I think that ended my time slot. So does anyone have any questions?
Great, thank you for that great presentation, Jeff. We do have a couple more questions, and I'll read them off to you. Let's see here. Mary says, when you move your flagged images to proofs, then go over them with the client, aren't they already flagged?
No, we actually take those, we remove those flags. So our workflow is when we're going through and we're using the pick flag, I'll open up an entire session. I'll go through the quick call working by concept. So as I go through here and choose these images here and pull them in and say I like this one as a favorite and I hit pick. Once I go through, I'll have it to show me just the picks, and I'll turn off down here with these flags. You can have it to show you just the picked images. I'll have it to show me everything that doesn't have a pick flag on it. And so at that point, once I have everything that doesn't have a pick flag and I hit reject, then I go back and have it show me everything with a pick flag, and I just unpick it. Because at that time, it's in there. And I know this session's already been done, so that's why it's making it so hard for me to show you with that one. But so yeah, so once I go through there and I actually pick them, then I'll go through and inverse that and show me everything that doesn't have a pick flag, and I'll hit the reject button. And the reject button takes all those away. I move everything else, the ones that are picked. I create a, I'll simply come into here, right-click, create folder inside of proofs, and I'll name it, proofs. I'm going to just name this one too. And so now it creates that folder, and so I pick everything that has a pick flag, and I just drag it right into that proofs too. And this moves it on your hard drive as well, so you don't need to. So once I get them into that proofs, then we just simply go back and unpick them because they're all in that proofs folder at that point. So, you don't need the pick flags because that's what you'll use, a combination of the pick and the reject flags when you're working with your client in a sales consultation to be able to let them make their choice. You want that proofs folder to pretty much, with the exception of your 5 stars, you want it to pretty much be empty, and the 5 stars are just ones that you're going to want to use. We don't really use a star rating with our clients when they're in front of us. That's something that we do internally as a way for us to know whether it's going to go on our blog or whether it's going to go on the website or any marketing materials or anything like that.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Let's see, Christine has a question, and she says, if I have had Lightroom for a while, but I want to start over with a new file organization, how should I go about this?
I would say that the easiest thing to do is just start with your next client. Create some export presets that, or use the ones that that you're going to get from me. I'm sure that not everyone will be able to use every one of them, so pick and choose the ones that you like. But whenever you create an export preset, in order to keep your files organized, just have it create, anytime you're going to export something, have it create a subfolder and put that in there. And that's the easiest way that I've found to do it, is that everything goes underneath that proofs folder, because when we're editing the images and we create that proofs folder, at that point we haven't exported anything. So it's like this folder here. This is a proofs folder here, but we haven't done a sales session yet. So they haven't come back in for their sales session. So once they did and I started exporting, then there would be folders underneath here. But right now there just aren't. Like this one here, there are folders underneath it because we've done sales, we've exported, we've done everything that we need to do with this one. So all these folders are already underneath there. So I would just start with your next one. I mean, you could go back and reorganize and move files manually, but I think you're going to burn a lot more time doing that than what it might be worth. I would just start now. If your files are already in Lightroom, the biggest thing that you want to do as far as getting organized is, I would say, put in all the keywords that you're going to use for whatever that you use. So if you're a newborn photographer and you've got certain props, then you might want to say baby with hands propped, head propped on hands, or yellow toboggan, and create all those keywords and go back to all your past sessions, and don't worry about how your file structure looks in here as much as you worry about as much as you want to make sure that you can actually access those files through keywords, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Gwilyn asks if you know of any good books about Lightroom that can be used as a reference.
I don't, because Lori is actually, she could probably be the one that would tell you. She taught me pretty much everything that I know about Lightroom. So, most of the stuff that we do is stuff that she's done as far as all the keywording and rating and tagging. There are a lot of resources out there. I'm sure, most of the books will probably go over all the stuff that I've just gone over, with the exception of like a lot of the plugins for the blog and for creating apps and stuff like that. But the star and the rating and the keywording and things like that is pretty basic stuff that just a lot of people don't realize how powerful it is within there. So, I think if someone could really get a grasp on, keywording, figure out a system of rating, starring, and color coding that works for them, and master creating smart collections, I mean, that is powerful when you're actually working within Lightroom, because at that point you can access anything that you need to access at any point. So I would start there. Look at keywording, rating, tagging, and smart collections.
Okay, great. Okay, we're getting close to just about out of time, but I did have a couple people who asked you if you could reiterate how to get your presets.
Okay, yep. That is going to be right here. So, again, here are, this is the company that make us look good is what I call it. And obviously, thanks to PhotoBiz, love PhotoBiz. Studio Cloud, if you need something to manage your business with and make sure that all your invoicing and your studio workflows are down in a way that nothing drops through the cracks, check out Studio Cloud. It's free. Pro Image Share is the app for creating the web apps. It's the plugin for creating the web apps. And if you guys haven't heard of PhotoVision, check out PhotoVision. Ed's a good friend of mine. He lives just down the road from our studio here, and it's some awesome education for a really, really good price. I think it's like $49 or $59 a year, and you get a 2-hour DVD every couple of months. And it's just, he follows some of the top photographers in the country, and there's a lot of good education on PhotoVision. But if you go to feedback.indigosilverstudio.com, tell me what you thought of this webinar. And again, I apologize, my computer crashed. I know I was kind of all over the place spinning. If you could see me, I was spinning over here a little bit, so freaking out. But give me some feedback. Let me know what you thought. It'll redirect you to a link that you can just go download those. Just be sure to change out all our information in it, because right now it's still in the signatures of some of the email stuff. It still says like Indigo Silver. So just put your it's pretty simple. Just put your information in there. As far as the watermark for those export presets to work correctly, you'll need to actually create your watermarks. And if you need to change that pixel size from 800 or to whatever, then it's simply just change it and update the action. Let me show you how to do that really quick. It's just take a second. So let's say you get my exports and you want this teasers for senior teasers right here, and you want to change something about it. When you come down, if you need to change, like once you load in your watermark, and you change it to like whatever size you want, simply right-click on it and hit Update with Current Settings. So when you're going in here for your email, if you want to rewrite, obviously take all this information out. If you want to rewrite this paragraph and put your information here, just type in all your stuff and then right-click Update with Current Settings, and that'll save it with your current settings in there. So, and the easiest way to import those and load those, if you're not sure how to load presets in, is right-click up here and hit Import, and then just navigate to each one and import it, and it'll bring it in here for you. Now again, the email and the blog, these right here, you will need those two plugins from Photographer's Toolbox. But again, it's donationware, and they're like $10 or something like that.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, everybody, today for all the great questions. Jeff, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. It was a really great webinar and very informative. A recording of today's webinar will be posted on the PhotoBiz YouTube channel at youtube.com/PhotoBiz. Also, be sure to check our blog and watch your email for updates about future webinars. Our next webinar will be this Thursday, September the 26th, and it'll be quick and easy logo and graphic design with our own PhotoBiz image whiz, Chelsea. Thanks again, Jeff, and thank you for everyone. Everyone, this concludes this episode of PhotoBiz Live. Have a great day, everyone.